Welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a while. This video is pretty much 90% about fusing. So if you have any questions about fusing, this might be the video for you. If you saw my last live stream a couple weeks ago, I invited my son into the studio with me, and we kind of started a painting together, worked on it a little bit, and it's not really that great of a video, but this is what I've done with that kind of initial painting. I added some text stamping and cleaned up the surface just a little bit, and now I'm adding a layer of wax. Now, in my stamped text, I added some oil paint, and that oil paint is still wet. So the reason I did the kind of up and down adding the wax to the surface is because I didn't want to streak that oil paint. I didn't want to have lines of black paint all the way across the surface. But the problem with what I'm doing is that adding wax to the surface in that way really makes it difficult to fuse well. Another thing that makes it really difficult to fuse well is the fact that I really don't want to interrupt or disrupt the text that I've added to that bottom layer. If I fuse too deeply, too quickly, those words will just melt. Everything will just melt, and I'll have no details kind of underneath the surface. And another problem that I'm having is that I'm using a blowtorch. Most of my art supplies are still packed up because our house is still for sale. So I'm having to use my blowtorch on this piece instead of using my heat gun. And I think a heat gun would be a little bit better to fuse with in this instance. I think it might take a little bit longer, but I'd be able to spend a little bit more time on areas of the surface and without messing up the layers beneath. So I'm kind of struggling with this piece a little bit. Fusing can be really tricky on any encaustic painting that you're doing, but when you're really trying to not disrupt the layers, it just makes for a really difficult fusing process. So what I'm doing now is I'm cleaning up the edges. So I scraped all the wax off, and I'm taking the tape off, not because I'm finished, but because I'm going to be adding accretion, which is another fusing heavy technique. With accretion, you get a lot of buildup on the edges, and if I don't take my tape off first and paint the edges first, kind of finish those edges, I won't really be able to later on. The tape will be really hard to take off. There will be wax all over it, and it will kind of destroy, taking the tape off and then trying to finish the edges afterwards will kind of destroy that accretion buildup that happens on the edges. And I don't want to do that. I want to have it a nice finished edge and then add the accretion kind of on top of it.
I'm just looking at painting. Ooh, I like that.
Well, thank you.
Okay. When I started growing up, I kept painting and painting, and I didn't touch the layers.
Nice. I bet your layers were nice and crisp.
Yes.
Looked really good.
Yes, they were. And I kept not touching them. Do. So. You did it! You connected the paint!
I did. Almost done. I just gotta carefully get this. Oop, it just slipped out of my hand a little bit. Yikes. No harm done.
You did it!
What do you think?
It's awesome!
Thanks. That part with my son was just too cute not to include, so hope you enjoyed it. So this is what I've got. I've got 3 layers of the text stamp in this painting. 2 of them are covered up with other layers, and then there's the surface stamp that I haven't covered up yet. Now when I do this accretion, I let the wax kind of cool on my brush for about 15 to 30 seconds, and then I gently brush it over. I start at the edge so I don't get a big glump of wax on the surface at first when I first start brushing, and I just brush it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and the cooler wax will kind of cling to the edges of the text, the textures, the raised parts of the surface, and it creates this really funky, really awesome kind of texture. And the more layers you add, the more buildup you get. Now, fusing is really important for this technique too, because the more layers of wax that you add, the more little balls of wax are going to form on the surface, almost like little mushrooms kind of growing or whatever. And if those pieces are not fused well enough, they will break off and you'll lose a lot of those spots. So you make sure you want to fuse every after every application. You know, you'll use up all of your wax brushing back and forth, and then you go ahead and fuse it. Now, you got to be careful when you fuse because you don't want to lose all that awesome texture. So you have to very quickly kind of brush it across. Watch for that sheen, that wet sheen, to show that the wax is melting a little, just a little bit. Do that a few times, back and forth, and then you can add some more wax in the same way. If you guys have any questions about fusing or accretion, I try to explain myself as best as I can, but I know that there's a lot of stuff that I end up leaving out or a lot of particulars that you want to know about. So leave me a comment and I'll for sure come in and answer you as best as I can. I had a hard time deciding if I wanted to show you guys a wider angle or kind of go close up. I did a little bit of close up at the beginning, but I thought it was really cool to kind of see the texture as it builds up from a distance because you can see those ripples, the waves. This is kind of the first time I was happy that I had added the wax in that kind of up and down way that I did at the beginning because that texture comes through with the accretion process because it clings to those little bumps and builds them up. So it kind of looks like the bottom of the ocean a little bit, which I think is pretty cool. Now, this is one technique where my tendency is always to go a little too far, to just keep going and going. I was trying to hold back with this because I want the text to show through, but I also really love that build up. So it was kind of hard to strike the balance. I think I did okay, but maybe I added one too many layers. I'm not sure. But I will say that I made a big mistake with this piece. You're probably like, I would be really surprised if you can see it in the video. I don't think you'll be able to see it. But if you can, let me know in the comments what you think the mistake is. I'm going to do a short to kind of show you what I did. I feel very silly. But yeah, give me your guesses. I'd love to hear what you think my big mistake was. And I don't know, maybe you guys can give me some comfort. I'm having a hard time thinking it's not a big deal, because it's really just affecting the final result of the piece. But I don't know, maybe you guys won't think it's a big deal. Again, fusing is really the most important part of encaustic painting. It affects everything. If the layers are not fused well together, it affects the integrity of the piece. So fusing is really just the key to encaustic painting. And when you have a fusing heavy technique like accretion, it becomes really important to practice and kind of see what works and what doesn't, what tools are best for what you're doing and things like that. Um, I think some of that is personal preference, but it's also just the way things work. The way the blowtorch works is it's very, very hot in a very small portion of space. And for that reason, I think it works less effectively for accretion and for fusing, very careful fusing, than like a heat gun. Well, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, if you have any questions or comments or suggestions, put them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support, and I will see you in the next video.